Hey, in this thread, I want to show everybody something. This is one of those aggravating things that, and the reason I mentioned that I would make the offset a little bit larger, because as you can see, the threaded area is going to be sticking out, and that would interfere with the spindle. So this is that 910 thou offset. If I was doing this over again, in hindsight, I'd make it about 940, maybe 950. It wouldn't hurt anything to have it a little further over. You still have a huge clamping area. So anyway, what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a custom bolt here where the center portion here is turned down to about 1/4 of an inch, or maybe even less. It's not going to affect the strength or the clamping ability. So there'll be a threaded portion here, threaded portion up here and up top to receive the nut. But I'll bring it, let me show you how that works. So we have a piece of 5/16 inch stock laid out, and the blue mark that you see there, this is the portion that needs to get turned down to about 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to do that first, and then I'll thread this part here, which is basically going to be the bottom portion, and then I'll flip it around and thread this portion here. Okay, I turned the center section down. It's about 1/2 inch long. Turned that down by the 1/16 of an inch, so now it's just about 1/4 inch overall outside diameter on that thin portion. And I'm set up to thread this thing now, taking a initial scratch pass from my 24 threads per inch. I've cut a lot of 24 TPI threads this week, so I know that is good. And what's nice about making that undercut first is now I've got a clean, easy place to stop my travel of my threading tool. Alright, here we go. Show you what I'm talking about. So here's the bottom portion of the cotter, the split cotter, the part that's threaded. And I finished making the threads. Let me show you how that goes. So there's the threads. Actually, I put this on one time to take a look and see if my clearance was good, and it actually was not. So I came back and took another 5 or 10 thou off the center portion there. But now you can clearly see that the steel center portion with the lower diameter, the reduced diameter, is below the split cotter. I put a straight edge across there to double check, but it should be fine, and this is more than enough clearance for the cotters to work. So in actuality, it'll be something like this, with about 100 thou space in the middle of the two when they're in their fully clamped position. But that's why I wanted to make this. I made the depressed center, so to speak, 1/2 inch wide, so there's plenty of gap there. And now all I have to do is pull this out and thread the top portion, and then I can cut it off and we'll be good to go. So the threading came out good, looks really nice, really pleased with that. So off to the next part. And just to be clear about what's needed next, so here is the threaded bottom portion on with a little bit of thread sticking out, just for safety's sake, so to speak. And then the next part that all I've got to thread, let me tighten up the collet here a little bit. I've got the 5/16 inch threaded rod in one of the 5/16 collets, 5C collets. So there's the rod portion that I just threaded, the test fit piece on here. This is about the final position with the 100 thou gap, and the bottom, the smooth portion, still the clearance below where the center part will be. It should be fine. You can see that now, maybe, hopefully. And after I test fit it, I mean, if it's not clear enough, I can always move that down a little bit, but I think we'll be fine. And then this portion, since this part of the upper part is reamed out, I don't have to really thread that part. But this part up here will need to be threaded so that it can engage the ball handle. So that's why I marked this part right here. I'll thread down a little bit further than it needs to be, but no sense threading this portion here. I'll let it slide a little bit, just let it be. I'll bring you back when we've got it finished. Okay folks, so here is basically the finished product. The threaded piece with the thinned out center section. And in a second I'll put it inside the casting and show you that. If I had a stand for my phone, I'd be able to do that, but I'm going to have to set it up and then pull the phone back out. But so hopefully that makes sense. I know for a fact that the top end here where my pinky is, It's probably like a ½ inch too long, or at least a quarter of an inch, but that's okay. I wanted to make it long on purpose because when I get everything all said and done, I may want to put washers in between here, and then once I figure out the exact final length, then I can just, it's no big deal to cut this off on the bandsaw and round the edge, round the top edge for the final fit. It's way easier to make them a little bit longer than you need and then cut them later. Okay, this was an interesting night out here in the workshop, just making that customized pin. As you can see, let me get my flashlight out, maybe you can see it better, or let me turn this overhead on. That might help a little bit. But the pin, the brass pins are in place. I'm pointing this out. I tested this a couple of times, and my initial eyeball test was not satisfactory. I actually had to take the part out and take it down. The final diameter that I ended up with for the center part of the pin was 220 thousandths of an inch. So quite a bit removed there. Let me show you the finally got it to fit, test fit with the spindle, and it fits in there fine. It'll clamp up good too. Here's the bolt. And as I said, when I get all said and done, most likely I'll end up taking about a quarter of an inch off of the length of this bolt. I'll probably have I'm thinking about making a set of nice brass washers, kind of finish washers, to go on the outside of all of these ball handles, but it's always easier to make them longer than shorter. Let me take the ball handle off, set that over here, take the spindle out carefully, don't want to mess anything up, and slide the clamping part out. So here is the top portion. There's the center section, sort of the barbell shaped part. Like I said, this part I had to machine down to 220 thou in the lathe, and so there's a nice 5/16 portion here, a 5/16 24 threaded portion there, and the same thing at the bottom. So pretty pleased with how this all came out. It'll be plenty strong. I really don't like to do this. I had to do something like this on the pillar tool. I actually ended up, one of my offsets was off, so that's how I came up with this solution. And like I said, that's plenty strong. That's thicker than a number 10 bolt there anyway, so it'll be fine. But as I said, instead of using 910 thou offset, probably if you use like 940 or 960, something like that, you'd have you wouldn't have this problem, and you'd still have plenty of bite on the actual spindle itself. So a little way to work around a problem there. Hope that's helpful to you, and I'll keep you posted as I make progress here.